Hi guys. So I want to take you through my drum routing and how I set up my drum template in general. And basically, it's nice to have everything set up in advance so you can just have lightning quick workflow and just rapidly throw together something that sounds really good. And you'll always fine tweak it. Make it sound better and better over time. But to get ideas out very, very quickly, right, and have a lot of options and really get all the friction out of your workflow really makes a difference. So I'm going to take you through this. It's kind of a long video, so what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to do this one and put some timestamps down in the description, and then I'm going to make different smaller videos on each of the subjects that we cover in here that are a little bit more dedicated and a little bit like more focused. But this one's going to go through sort of the whole setup, and I'll be sure to leave links in the descriptions to those new videos as I make them. So basically what this video is going to cover is bringing instruments from Kontakt, like doing multi-out of Kontakt to get, when you have lots of drums in Kontakt. I'm going to show you on what's now called Drumvolution. When I first got it about a year ago or something, it was called Evolution. It's my favorite drum machine. It's great. So I'm going to take you through how to route that multi-out from Kontakt through Ableton drum racks and ultimately into individual stems, right? And like group those, right? So like, say you've got a handful of different hats, right? You'll basically be able to route that from Kontakt in this drum rack into a whole nother drum rack, right? And those will be grouped together. And then you can actually trick out all those individual drum racks and just make everything more powerful. So I'm going to take you through this. It's super fast. You can literally make good beats in under 2 minutes, like your drums and everything. Just the pace at which you can select the drums is incredibly fast. And if you have any sort of drum pro patterns in advance, then you can just throw those at them and it'll work because it's all general MIDI compatible. So I'll talk a little bit about that too. But basically it's kind of standardized in terms of what MIDI is assigned to what drums. Like a kick drum is a C1. Everything has its own drum style. So if you get like MIDI packs online, you can get general MIDI, and there'll be drum patterns done by real drummers. They sound great, and you can sort of throw those at your drum kits, try out 100 different patterns in a few minutes, and within like 5 minutes, you've selected a custom drum kit that sounds really good. You've gone through dozens of patterns that all sound really good, and you've picked something awesome that you can fine tweak from there. Right, so that's kind of the idea of the workflow. I'm going to take you through it right now, but we're going to do this in chunks. Right, so we're going to talk about the Kontakt routing. Right, I'm going to talk about the stemming and why I do it that way and how I did that. So first, it's going to be the multi-out and the general idea of the multi-out. We're going to cover some filtering, like MIDI filtering, to make this work better. And then we're going to talk about different ways that I've tricked out the individual stems, because once you have Drumvolution feeding into your hats and your toms and all that stuff, in each of those, I then have stacks of samples in these things called 128s. So if you don't know what 128s are, I'll leave a link for the description for that too. But basically, you'll also have access to all these other samples that you can layer and sort of fill out your drum beats. So it's not just what you get out of Drumvolution. So it's kind of like an advanced workflow from there. And like I said, it's all stemmed out, so you can just freeze and flatten everything, and then you'll get all your stems immediately without any extra work. Another advantage to this is you can lay out your drums however you want and still get it to be general MIDI compatible by doing a MIDI filter, and I'll take you through that too. So when you're drumming in, you can like have your kicks where you want and your snares where you want and everything all on one drum rack. So you don't have like a rack just for your kicks and then just for your snares and everything. Right, and so it's hard to like drum in naturally, right? You can have them wherever you want, but then the audio still gets routed out to their own stems and everything like that, so that when you're sequencing everything after you've played it in, right, and you're chopping it up and you're using compressors and all this other stuff, you have all the flexibility how you'd want it for the mixing stage, right? But for the tracking stage, you also have all the flexibility you want. Okay, so these are my drums, and before I really delve into Kontakt itself and the multi-outs from Kontakt, I'm just going to sort of show you around. So these are all the individual stems, right? You can see these cells down in the drum rack. These are my kicks and impacts and stuff like that. So this did not come from Drumvolution, but these did, and these will all feed back into Kontakt, and the actual instance of Kontakt is here, and you can see all these cells. These cells are actually empty, right? They're just placeholders to have the names show up, so that when you're programming your MIDI, it tells you like, oh, this is the control to reverse a sequencer, these are different Foley things, etc. You can hear these. Right, so that makes sequencing way easier if you have all the names and all the drums available just in one thing, but as you'll see, it will pretty much instantly come out here. And so this is, the stems that I use. This is pretty standard in terms of how like the pros track their stuff, and it totally makes sense. So this is kind of percussion kind of stuff. Cymbals are actually more like effects, so usually I don't route this through my drum bus. You'll actually see that this goes to the master and it doesn't go to the drum bus. It's mostly because the harmonic makeup, like all the noisiness of this, it fucks up your compressors and stuff like that, and you sort of treat them differently. You're not really treating them like percussive things. I mean, the hats are kind of like the percussive cymbals, but you can sort of see what's going on. And also then this black thing, this is all these beat tools that I have. So if I have general MIDI, I would throw it into here, right? And you'll see that this this converter is pulling MIDI from this, and it's running through this MIDI filter, which just each one of these has a pitch, and they're all set differently. So you can see the pitch device, the number changing. Right, but all that's doing is it's taking the general MIDI layout and it's changing it to how I like my drums laid out when I'm playing, which is like this. Right, and so the reason I do this is so on, my drum pad here, this is like an 808 style kick, right, big kick, ghost kick, main snare, right, hat. Right, toms. So that's sort of what I put on my first page, and then on my second page, right, is more of the decorative stuff. I might one day change this. Claps are kind of more like snares, but sometimes I don't use them like snares, so it depends. And shakers are kind of like hats, so I might sequence this a little, or rearrange this drum rack at some point. But you get the point. So before I get into the evolution workflow, I would like to just point out this. So I have a bunch of MIDI clips that I recorded, just to give you an example. Cool, so you can hear how the drums are changing there at the end. That's part of the Drumvolution workflow that we'll get into a second, but I just kind of want to show you what I'm working with. And, I've got these hat patterns and stuff. All right, so, I usually make these from scratch, but sometimes I just put these together, or I use MIDI clips that I already have from, like hat patterns and stuff like that, or you can convert hat loops to MIDI using the Ableton convert feature. All that works. But yeah, so you get the point. So I'll just have MIDI clips that most of these these all are non-GM MIDI clips, but even if I had a general MIDI clip, what you'll see is it will actually work. I just throw this into this. Right, cool. So let's really quick get into the Drumvolution workflow in terms of picking a kit. I just want to dive into the speed here. Okay, so this is the general idea, is say this is my kick. Say I don't like that kick. This button up here will cause every drum that gets hit to play a different random sample, and it's actually 3 samples that are layered together, and then it randomizes each one. So there's a lot of combinations, right? So listen. Right, so say I like this kick, right? Then I could build the whole drum kit around that. this is kind of like a ghost kick. I kind of want it tighter. Right. Cool, right? So we've already got this part of the kit set up, right? Same thing on this page, right? So these are the cymbals up here for me, right? You can set this up however you want, but you know, we've got, right, different percussion and stuff. So that's all that there is to that part, right? Let's jump back into, let's do 16th Funk. That sounds fun. Right, and so, you know, as you can see, we're already kind of done, right? Now, it's obviously not perfect, but it's certainly good enough to write a song around and refine, right? And, you know, we could have gone an infinite number of ways with this, obviously, but already we've got something that's, like, workable. Right, and we can switch up these drum sounds. That's the other cool part, is if you hold this button, the randomize button, and you hit play, right, it will randomize every single drum hit. And so you get like this cool glitchy effect. So that's another thing you can do. Right, and so you could just resample that out and chop together the coolest parts. Right, so that's another cool thing that you can do with this. So let's actually dive into Evolution and see what's going on. I still call it Evolution. They've rebranded it to Drumvolution. But this is what it looks like. It's kind of overwhelming when you first look at it. But the gist of it is each one of these is a sound. Right, and this is how I have them set up. You can set them up however you want, and then this side you could put them wherever you want. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because there's other people who have done walkthroughs of this software, but you know, you can mix the sound together. You know, there's transient shapers and pitch and all the things that you could want for your drum programming. But at the end of this, if you notice, the sound's not coming out of Evolution, right? So if you look in, you know, it's coming out of the drums, but it came out of the toms. So even though this is where Evolution lies in this track here, it's all getting forwarded out to the individual stems. So let's take a look. Down here, you can see these outs. These are all the different outs of Kontakt. Now, in order to get the multiple outputs to even work in the first place, you need to look at the Outputs tab. And you'll notice how I have this set up here. Now, yours probably won't look like this until you've set yours up right. Okay, so the quickest way to deal with this is you just hit the plus button. Right here, you really want to put this to 1. And now we've got 12 of these, right? You know, the kicks, the snares, the hats, etc. We've got 12 things coming out of Evolution. Right, we want to delete the existing channels. I'm not going to make it the default configuration, right? But ascending output assignment, right? And bam, check it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, etc., all the way up to 23, 24. So that's how you want this. And once you've done that, you also need to make sure that all of these are assigned right. So they'll probably all be at master at first. So you need to go all the way up. And one of the quirks you'll notice is that when I hit standard out 2, right, it actually says 1, and 1 says master says master, 2 says 1, 3 says 2, etc. So you'll just have to take count for that. Like number 12 is 13. That's the last one on the list. I don't know why. Doesn't really matter why. But that's basically all you need to do for the immediate output of Kontakt itself. Now, you're not going to get anything out of Kontakt. You're not going to get anything out of Kontakt unless something is listening to that output channel, right? So that's what all of these guys are. So first off, I want you to take a look at this. All right, these are all going to my toms, and this is just a MIDI filter, right, to filter out everything but my toms, right? So filter out. Now you'll notice there's nothing here, right, in these racks. That's because I'm not pushing anything out from this main rack. Everything's being pulled from here. Right, so going back to these toms as an example, if we look at this high tom, this is the external instrument. The external instrument, if you look at instruments, is right here, and just throw it on there. So check where this is routed. It's to Evolution, which is this track here. That's the track that this guy that Kontakt was sitting in, right? And you'll notice this is the standard out 12, right? Or sorry, 10. And that's going to correspond to this particular tom sound, right? My high tom, right? This one is at 11, this one's at 12, this one's at 13, right? So this is what's pulling the audio from Kontakt, right? So when I hit a tom, right? So you can see this light up, like the green light up when I hit this low tom, right? This pops up. Right, that's what's pulling here. So in order to make sure that all these tracks are listening to what they're supposed to be listening to, these external instruments will do two things. They'll pull the audio from Kontakt, right? But they're also sending MIDI to Kontakt. If you have a MIDI clip that's playing toms, right, these are able to send toms or send MIDI to Kontakt, right? Just to show you again what I'm talking about. If I want the floor toms, like all the stuff from Kontakt to play, right, then it'll play. And if I want to receive that, say from these beats, I don't know if this beat has toms, but I'll show you just in general. The quickest way to do this is if we group these all together, we can get a group record button. But again, you just grab these, we turn them on record so they'll actually listen, hit play. All right, and we're just going to hit this record button. Now watch what happens. So we didn't have any snares or cymbals or Foley or anything in this particular drum pattern, but as you can see, the hats went to the hats, the snares went to the snares, etc. So if I were to grab these guys and turn them off of listening on in and turn them onto this, then I can start changing the MIDI individually from these guys. So I could have done the same thing if I had the whole pattern on Evolution here. We could have still recorded out to these guys. Right, so if I want to create a syncopated kick pattern or something, I can just go to this, right, go to these kicks and be like, okay, you know, let's have my 808 come here and, you know, my big kick here and like, or big one here, my ghosty one here, etc. And I don't like that big kick anymore. So we can change it, right? And so then we can play this one instead. All right, maybe put this one down, right? Right, so hopefully you're starting to see how quick this workflow is, right? You know, we selected this drum kit super fast just by holding that one button, just tapping till we like what we heard. You know, we've got these drum patterns, you know, that are MIDI drum patterns or one that I've drummed in on my Octapad. Very rapidly, we've come up with something. We've got it stemmed out. If I wanted to freeze this, I could just freeze this, right? And you will notice, bam, I've got a frozen track. No routing issues, no, oh, you can't do this because blah, 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 right? You just do that, and all of a sudden, you've got your audio, right? No more MIDI. So we can undo that. So far, we've talked about setting up Kontakt, but not entirely. I've talked about it setting up from the inside. I want to show you the drum rack aspects of this. Now, you could just do this all in audio tracks and just have the routing of the audio tracks pull from Evolution. Right, so just to give you an example of what I mean in case you do want to do it that way, but if we had an audio track, right, we could pull from Evolution, and then it would ask us, well, okay, you want to pull from Evolution, where do you want to pull from Evolution? Well, notice on here we got Evo 1. I've used two instances of Evolution, Drumvolution. Right, I use two instances, so I call them Evo 1 and Evo 2. So I've got 24 drum cells in total, not just 12. But you can see they're all right here. And so if I wanted to grab a kick drum, these are my kick drums, my snares here. I like the way that I have it set up, obviously. I've been tweaking this for a while. We can ungroup this. I usually just group this only for hitting the record button on all the things at once, right? So let's go through this in a little bit more detail really quick. All of these are placeholders. The only thing that's actually on here are these two instances of Evolution. Now, I want you to first notice that these say receive all notes, right? So Evolution is not sitting on any single cell. It's actually sitting on all the cells. And these are all just placeholders designed to make it so the labels show up. I'm going to do a whole nother video on that, but as long as you have something named in the cell, it'll tell you what that note corresponds to. So if you use like key switches on orchestral strings or something like that, you can actually set up the different articulations in a drum rack and set up your thing like your strings this way. So I'm going to do a whole video just on that. Again, these are all placeholders. There's some control things, like these are all just getting, you can think about these basically are getting passed through to Kontakt. Now, there's two instances of Kontakt, so that's what these filters are for. So there's filters all over this setup. So please watch my video on how to build MIDI filters, but basically, it's mostly, these are usually empty chains. Right, and some of them, like one of these has a pitch plugin. That's 16 semitones. That's like this whole page. So that's what's making this this top page here, right, is all of these notes here. Right, they're getting pushed down 16. So this clap is coming into this chain, and then it goes down 16. So by the time it gets to the second Evolution, right, this is my second copy of Evolution, it's going to act like it sent this cell. And the reason I did that is because that way I can set up my Kontakts symmetrically, so I'm not like changing what notes it's expecting to receive. It's just the default setup. Right, so I'm refiltering all these things out. I'm just shifting them down 16. You can see I filtered out a couple notes here just because I didn't want them to ever reach this copy of Evolution. So you can just, if you don't have notes in there, it'll get filtered out. This is just a MIDI effect rack, by the way. So if you want stuff to go through, you have to have like something there. So these are just labels and stuff, and pretty much all of these guys have filters. So we'll talk a little bit more about filters along the way, but definitely watch the video on how to build them. It's pretty straightforward, and they're easy to manipulate once you have a base template. And there's a free download of my filter templates, several filter templates in that video. So go check it out, please. Now, the reason they have these filters is because let's look at these hats and shakers. These are the cells that these hats and shakers are on. Any other MIDI that gets sent here, once it gets to this, it will not reach past this because there's no chain. Now, if I were to say drag this out, right, then this chain would receive that and it would make it through this filter. But basically, this is filtering out everything that is not one of these specific notes. And the toms have that, so the toms are filtering out everything that aren't toms, right? And the perk are filtering out everything that aren't these guys. And the reason I'm doing that is because when it gets sent out here, this is pulling from the hats and shakers post effects. That means post this filter. So this is getting the filtered MIDI. So if I were to, again, group these guys, stop them, right? So they're all on auto and they're recording, so it'll work, right? But if I hit record, right, it's only getting the hat MIDI, right? And so that's really, really useful because before it used to all of them get all of the MIDI, and then it was just kind of a mess because you have all these MIDI notes you're not using. I'm gonna save this whole rack template basically for you guys, so you can check the download description. You can reverse engineer it, but all the real magic starts here, and all of this stuff, right? Like all this MIDI or whatever will flow into here, right? And we can even program the MIDI directly in here, but that comes in to this drum rack, and all that's really in this drum rack are these guys and these filters. And the only reason these filters matter is because all of these guys are listening to those groups after the filters, right? So I've got the same stems that I use over here. I just have that, and they just contain these empty cells, right? There's no samples or anything in this drum rack, just these empty cells that are all past the filter, right? And it's really just about listening post-filter and building these labels so that you can follow everything, that you can route everything, and so you know where your perk is, right? You know where this random control is and stuff like that. So these notes up here, that actually is a feature of Evolution that will let you play melodies out of whatever drum sound you've allocated. So right now it's going to be the snare. Right, and because there's 2 copies of Evolution, I used to have this, I actually just added it, but this will switch to the other one, so it's going to turn off this key mode, which is just going to turn this off, so all this is going to get filtered out, right? And then this will turn this one off and turn this one on, right? So you can see this one turn on, right, as I roll that up. And so that's the clap on that side is being played melodically. So that's really good for 808s and stuff, or doing like trappy snares where you want to like play melody lines on your snares or whatever. But yeah, so that's this whole guy. Again, it's just the stems as you want to stem them out, right? It's these guys. You got to make sure that these are on receive all, so that they're receiving from all of these, right? But then it's going to receive all the notes, and they're both going to, so you're going to have to filter out what you don't want, right? But you can have these filters and everything. You know, learning to make MIDI filters, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you want to put like an ARP on just one note or something like that. I mean, it's awesome. So definitely learn how to use these MIDI filters. And it doesn't take long. It's like literally, oh, you need to filter out something different on this chain. Well, you just copy it over. And on key mode, it's like, oh, well, you can just like move this right or move this left, right? So it's very easy to just attach them, and you only have to do it once. So I'm going to get into how I've tricked out these racks now, because all of these are actually better than just Drumvolution, right? It could be Drumvolution, but I've actually set it up more advanced. So I'm going to start with the cymbals just because it's the most obvious. All right, so let's just hit play for a second. Super basic. So let's check out these cymbals. Now these are the cymbals that are in Evolution right now. That's fine, but usually these are kind of like placeholders for me, and I'll usually use them. I mean, I'll pick ones that I like, you know, and then I'll use them, but this rack's way more powerful. Every single one of these notes is a whole different creature, right? And if I tell this to listen to all ins or my MIDI fighter, which is what I'm using, right, then I can just right, I can just drum in what I want. This is that rack. Now this filter, all that's doing is it's filtering out the ones that are coming from Drumvolution, right? So that if I hit this button, it's not going to play the sample that's there. But if I want to layer those in, I actually can, right? So I can turn those on, and then it will also go to this rack. Now the reason for that is because this, just like Kontakt, is set to receive all notes. So this rack, these cymbals are actually receiving all the MIDI notes, and the MIDI note that's played is going to get passed through to this. So this is a 128. I'm not going to go into this in too much depth because I have another video that does already, but each MIDI note is a different sample. Let me turn off this follow so it doesn't do that. Now you can see these are actually just the effect cymbals, and that's because this is right in the middle, but this bank crossfade will cross between so it'll cross between these two banks. And so we've got, cymbals on the right, cymbals on the left. They're by two different designers, and then we've got these effect cymbals in the middle. Right? We can shorten these like with the release and whatnot. And again, every single MIDI note is different, right? Every single one is different. Okay, so I've recorded this loop in. You notice that this is all of the MIDI that came into Drumvolution, right? We don't need any of this because it's all in these over here. So I'm just going to set that down here. So if we're playing this and we want to sequence these cymbals, right? We can just be like, okay, I want some cymbal here, 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 and I want like a little shorter one here, and then we're going to put one like here, and then here, 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 and then here. Right, now I don't necessarily like any of those cymbals, right? So we can find ones that we do like. So first I might want this to be longer. We can actually show this automation and adjust this for each sample however we want, right? So if we want the first one to be longer, we can do that. It's very, very easy. You just right click, show automation, and you're done. So you're here. Right, that one's a pretty good one to start on. That one's pretty nice, but these effect cymbals are a little bit too vicious, so that we might want to, like, I don't know, crossfade away from the middle where these are. Right. Right, and so we just go on like that. All right, so I've sequenced some cymbals really quick. They're not the best, I kind of rushed through this, obviously, just because I'm trying to show you, the workflow. But so every single cell in this drum rack actually has access to not just cymbals, but 3 layers of cymbals that you can then crossfade between. Right, there's like filters and other things to sort of get them to sound how you want. Each of these is tricked out in its own way. So let's just say I hit record on this. So every single note on here is a different Foley sound, but it's actually not just a different Foley sound, right? In addition to those, you can move towards the percussion 128. And so these Foleys and this percussion 128 are actually cross-faded together. So if we look inside this percussion 128, right, you'll notice that we've got all of these random sounds, right? Right, that can be layered with the Foley. Right, and so you can just automate this on a per sample basis if you want to like change the blend, or you can even like, automate through the blend during the course of the samples playback, right, to have it like have an evolving texture. So I have a few different dedicated Foley stacks, and like for instance this knob, if I show you, this will randomize what note what sound you get. So this is always the same, but if I crank this to like 3, which randomizes all 3 of these, it'll be different every single time. Right, so that can be really nice. For instance, you could program some pointillistic thing like this. I'm going to make sure that this is on one voice because I want each one to choke off the previous one. All right, so have a listen to this. This is Foley on every eighth, and we could like delete out some of these, so it's like... Right, and you get the point, so maybe it'll just like duplicate this out a couple times. maybe make this even twice as fast. Now this is on random right now, but you could just as easily take these and decide which sounds you want. Right, like this one, I want that one. This one, I want this one. Right, and maybe we'll just like do that 3 times because some repetition is nice, and then all of a sudden, right, you know, so you can quickly build patterns because every single one of the cells on this drum rack is a different Foley sound, and it's also layered with these percussion sounds that you can then, again, crossfade between with this knob. So toms is similar, except for these are all tuned, and I did that so that you could play in like melody lines and stuff like that, right? So if you go to any of these, listen. Right, so say we don't like that tom in particular, right? Well, this selector knob selects through the toms. And this is the melodic 128, so I made a video on this too. There's five videos in that series. There's 5 videos in that series on different ways to build your 128s. This is the melodic style because I wanted to play in melodies with my toms. I did the same thing with snares. Right, so we can automate this knob too. So it's not like we're stuck to the samples. We're there, but we can easily play melodies because they're all tuned. Right, so say I want some pattern that's like, cool, so have a listen. You know, very straightforward. Just as easily I can automate this selector knob, right? And I'm just going to do it randomly, but you could, you know, go in and just use draw mode and just do it like this and pick which one you want. You know, just change it. Cool. And so, you know, you can quickly make badass tom fills. You know, you could, like, if you wanted, move this over to the perk thing, and then you could double up this fill with this guy. Right. Right, so you've got this, like, this other layer, and, you know, again, you could just as easily, like, move this to anything. Right, super, super fast, super flexible. These hats and shakers, the tricked out part of this isn't, again, it's the same thing, these 128s. This one, you know, it pays to make good 128s. All right, that's part of the lesson here. So this one has an open hi-hats of various producers and sound designers, right, in the middle. And then we're crossfading between these banks, again, with this crossfade knob. That's all over here, so I don't have to deal with that. So this is that crossfading, right? But I've also put arpeggiators on these knobs. So these, for instance, this is what's coming from Drumvolution. Notice they sound quite good. But if I want to arp it, right, to like do some trap thing or something, I can be like wah wah wah. You know, I can do that. There's also on the 128s, which are every other cell in this whole drum rack of these whole 128 cells, besides the ones going to Drumvolution, those again are the 128s, and so they're all different samples. And if you want inside the filter, you could layer in those samples. So if I'm doing this, right, let me turn off this auto follow. That's not a good thing right now. But if I turn this on, right, you can hear that it added a layer, right, from the 128. And so, but just looking at this, right, you can FM stuff if you want. You can repitch your stuff. This is the attack. Sometimes you want your hats to be like smooth and not be so like sharp, especially if you have a lot of them. So, right, so I've quickly got you know, this high cut and this attack knob to be able to smooth out the transients to make them smoother or sharper, or like more high frequency content or less high frequency content without having to dive into the rack. You know, the snares and claps, this is also tuned just so I can do tuned things, but it's basically the same thing as the toms, but it's snares, right? I might talk about this big snare thing here. So these big snares, that's actually just a placeholder. And the reason I did this way is this one's also receiving everything. And so what I did is just because the tuning of this, like the high notes, right? So we can do like little like trappy patterns or like whatever you want for your tuned snares, right? These are all in tune, so the notes that you play are the notes that you get, right? But down at the bottom, right, all of these notes down here are these really big, massive snares, and some of them are really, really big. Right, so these you can, checkerboard in and stuff as well. So the way I have this set up is, again, using these MIDI filters. They're super powerful. So this is all the notes that are the big snare notes, basically. And if I want to change those, right, so I can just move that. Cool. All right, so I actually programmed that Doppler snare that you just heard myself. I'm going to do a whole video on the Doppler effect, so just FYI. But yeah, so you got those big snares as well as the regular style snares. Kicks, this one's cool too. So everything above this impact, so the impact, it's got like all these explosions and stuff. It's great. So let's just check this really quick. All right, if I want a different impact, from here on, this is a C2. That's my sub, and I use Sub-Zero, which is by Echo Soundworks. It's a Kontakt instrument. And it just sounds great, and it's really easy to play. Right, so these are all the sub notes, and so you can just draw in your sub patterns, right, with your kicks and everything. And you can extract these chains separately, so if you want your sub completely separate, then it's pretty easy to just extract the chains, and it'll still work. Like I said, it's a pretty involved drum program, and that's why this is an advanced tutorial. The last thing I want to show you is this. So I've been synthesizing all of my kick drums and snare drums lately in Kick 2 by Sonic Academy. And this knob here basically crossfades between the Drumvolution kick, which I usually use just as a placeholder nowadays. They sound great, but you just get a lot out of synthesizing your own kicks. So that's all this is. So you can see this is the one that's the external instrument getting sent to Evolution. Right, and then Kick 2, right, this is a kick sequencer, right, and so, you can see some of the kicks I've made recently or whatever, right, I could just like throw one of those in, and so now when I play this kick, as long as I have this cranked up, it'll be this kick I've synthesized. Right, that's a cool one I just did, it's got like this, yeah. So I'll probably do a whole nother video on Kick 2 pretty soon. I've fallen in love with this thing. It's super rad. There's a lot of cool features, like you can just like generate the waveform and just drop it places and stuff. It's really nice. Yeah, but that's pretty much it. Then, these guys, this is just if I want to add like some loop or something. This is just for like other random things that I'd want to sequence with the drums, like little like vocal shot things that are kind of percussive, like a hey or whatever. But that's pretty much it, and again, you can freeze and flatten all of this immediately, so it's not really a problem. I will say that the reverb from Evolution ends up here. It's often good just to do your own reverb outside of Evolution. I mean, it's actually got a pretty good reverb engine in it. So don't worry about that, but your reverbs are going to end up here separate from your drums, which can be nice. So that's just something to be aware of. There's a lot to reverse engineer here. Not all of it at all is mandatory, right? It's just really fast and effective. And so it takes a couple minutes to pick a kit. It takes a couple minutes to find some bass patterns, and then you're fine from there. Eventually I'll resequence the whole thing, right? I'll like change where the snares hit sometimes, and like where cymbals come in, and just random stuff, and add decoration and detailing throughout the song. But this really seems like the best setup. I've been slowly refining it, and it's everything from like the quick beat making that Drumvolution provides, but then all the flexibility with these 128s to craft and layer and shape these sounds, and just have all these options at your fingertips. I love it. I absolutely love it. It's really changed the game. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll answer them. You can message me directly if you want to, but it might be better to just put them in the comments so everyone can see. And yeah, I'll make this available to you. I can't provide the samples for you guys because I don't own the rights to all these samples, but it's super easy to make 128s. It really doesn't take very long. Some of these, even these ones that are more or less hand-picked or slightly better, they usually took me less than 3 or 4 minutes a piece to make. And there's what, like there's 6 stems here, so I made like 6 128s or something like this for this rack, just like top-notch ones that I can use every single time. So hopefully this was informative. Take it in steps, because I know there's like a bunch of different things here. Like this is several videos worth of content. Hopefully this gets your juices flowing on like what's possible with drum routing, and that you build something of your own where you can just create something really fast and you're not spending all this time rearranging stuff or like, I don't know, reinventing the wheel. All right, take care guys, love you, peace.